Well, welcome to the Finance and Scrutiny Committee for the 13th of January of this year, and a huge welcome to all members, officers, and cabinet member, and welcome also to members of the public and the press. This meeting is held in public, but is not a public meeting, and there are no opportunities on this occasion to take questions or comments from the members of the public. For members of the committee, the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and is being recorded. Please mute yourself when not speaking and use the raise hand feature if you wish to speak, and wait until invited by myself. Keep your hands raised until invited to speak or decide that you do not wish to speak. And once called upon, put your hand down. Okay, so thank you for that. As I say, a huge welcome to you all. If we can start the agenda item 1 is any apologies?
There have been no apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2, any declarations of interest? Cindy?
Yes, I just wish to declare that I'm a casual employee of Telford Wrekin Council.
Thank you, Cindy. Are there any other declarations of interest? Doesn't seem to be. Okay, thank you, Cindy. Oh, Anthea.
Chair, just for clarity for those people who are watching the meeting, Cindy, presumably you're declaring it as an interest, but you're remaining in the meeting?
Yes, I'm an independent co-optee. This is my 5th year, but I have a casual employment contract with the school governing service.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting of the 9th of December. Everyone has received the minutes. Is there anything that anybody wants to raise that needs to be amended or anything like that? Or can I accept that there's a proposer for those minutes?
Move it, Chair.
Thank you, Caldy. A seconder?
I'll second, Chair.
Thanks, Charles. Right, is everyone in agreement to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. I'll sign those accordingly. All right. Thank you. Right. Agenda item 4 is the financial monitoring and mid-year budget review report. Can I invite the cabinet member Ray Evans and the Chief Financial Officer Ken Clark to make their presentation?
I think Ken's going to do it, Steve.
Yes, I believe so. So if you're there, Ken.
Yes, I'm here, Stephen.
Lovely,
yep.
Thank you. So welcome, and I say we're all waiting with abated breath.
Okay, I'll try not to let you down. Now, my colleague Pauline is going to share her screen, hopefully, because she has the
Sorry, I'm just trying to share the screen. Problems, it's putting me on hold.
Yes, Chair, I think there's been an issue with, I think for some reason Ken has been put on hold, so I'm just going to remove him from the meeting and then join him again, because I don't have an ability to take him off hold, unfortunately.
Can you see the presentation at all, Anthea?
Not at the minute.
Oh dear. No. Let me try again.
Pauline,
we have Ken back.
If I try and do this.
No,
yes,
I'm sorry. Oh, have you got
Can
it
you
now?
see that?
Okay. Let me go into
right.
the beginning.
So I can't see anything now other than the presentation, but can you just confirm that you can see it?
Can you see that on the full screen?
Confirmed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay,
Anyone
so
else? Yeah.
I shall start then. So thank you, Stephen. Sorry for that hiccup. So I'm going to be talking about the council's budget position. So there were two reports that went to Cabinet at the last week on Thursday. So the first was a financial monitoring update report, and that obviously dealt with the projected outturn position for this year and gave an update on that. And then the second report that went was a budget report. So the service and financial planning strategy for 2021 to 22, going through to 23-24. And we only got a 1-year settlement from the government again, so that for the third year on the run, we've only got a 1-year budget proposal for the revenue budget, but capital projects have to be planned over a longer term period. So they are included for a 3 or 4 year period in that set of papers. As Stephen said, I'm very happy for you to ask questions either as we go along or at the end of the presentation, but unfortunately I can't see anything other than my slides, so somebody will have to shout out that somebody wants to ask a question. And then at the end of the meeting, you will obviously be identifying those areas that you want to receive more information on for your further discussions on Monday and Tuesday next week. So if I deal first of all then with the projected outturn position for the current financial year. This slide just summarises the
Chair, we appear to have lost the
You
presentation.
lost Ken.
We have lost Ken.
And the presentation.
And the presentation as well. Can we?
I'm just going to see if we can dial Ken back in. And
Yeah, please.
I do have the presentation, so I can share a copy if need be.
Wonders of modern technology.
It's sent to try us. Ken, do we have you back?
No.
No, not yet.
I am back. Yes.
Oh, hello, Ken.
I've been giving my presentation, but I'm guessing you haven't heard any of it.
We did lose you.
Then it's froze.
Just 2 pages.
Ken, we did lose you quite early, but I've got the presentation. Would you like me to share it?
That would be great. Let me get rid of what I'm trying to share. Okay.
So just bear with me a second.
Where do I need to go? Where do I need to start from?
Page 3.
This one.
That one.
Okay, right. So it's obviously been a year like no other year. There lots of pressures on our budget in terms of additional spending pressures for adult social care, additional support and costs coming from providers. We've had to provide PPE for lots of our employees. We've had income hits in terms of when the leisure centres, for example, during the lockdown periods, they've had to close, so we haven't been getting any of the income, but we haven't furloughed any of our employees. We've diverted them onto other activities to help support the community. So we face a lot of additional cost pressures and lost income from those services that had to close and from car parking and so on. So in addition to that, we've also then had additional pressures from business rates, and council tax income is slightly down from what we would have expected. So we're saying about £14 million worth of pressures on service budgets, plus another £5 million projected shortfall on business rates and council tax. So in total, that's around just under £19.3 million of problems. But the government have actually been very generous now in terms of allocating us over £17.2 million worth of emergency special grant that has been applied against those pressures. So the net pressure that we're projecting at the end of this year is just over £2 million. But that is before we take any benefit from a scheme that was announced in the Comprehensive Spending Review on the 25th of November, which is a tax income guarantee scheme from the government, which will reimburse the council for 75% of any irrecoverable losses from council tax and business rates. But there are no details of how that scheme will work or how they're going to define irrecoverable losses at the moment. So we can't actually make a projection of what the benefit from that might be at the moment. The 5.1 million, although that's the projected shortfall by the end of this or at the end of this year at the moment, that some of that will be irrecoverable in as much as we'll end up writing off business rates, for example, if a business has gone into liquidation. But part of it will just be a timing issue in as much as we've agreed payment arrangements where people are struggling. We've agreed payment arrangements that mean that we will get some of that money, but there'll be a timing delay before we do receive it. So if we move on to look at how the position has changed compared to the last time we went to Cabinet. There has been a significant improvement of £9.6 million compared to the last time we went to Cabinet. And the main reasons for that are shown on this slide. So we've put in an assumed benefit from Treasury Management by the end of the year of around £3 million, because we hadn't put anything forward from that up until now. There's obviously money that the council would generally receive, so that is kind of being set off against the pressures that we've faced, but and not from the government. But there's £3 million assumed benefit from Treasury Management by the end of the year. We've had some additional government grant compared to the last time we went to Cabinet, so another £2 million from the government. We've seen a reduction in the projected overspend on safeguarding, so that's a bit of a muddly sentence, but we're now saying that safeguarding is likely to be around £2.3 million over by the end of the year, and that's around £360,000 less than we said last time we went to Cabinet, so that's helped to improve the position. That 2.3 million pressure that we're still facing on safeguarding, though, that is after having put £5 million more into the budget for safeguarding for the current year, which we really did think was going to be a reasonable budget. And I think without the additional pressures that we've seen from COVID, for example, some children haven't been able to move out from temporary placements and go to a longer term placement, so they've stayed in expensive short-term placements for longer because of the restrictions that we've been operating under. Adult social care, again, the projected overspend has come down by £500,000, but we're still projecting to be over by 4.2 million by the end of the year. Property investment portfolio, again, there's been an improvement in the projected position there of around £1 million, and then a small number of other variations. So it's still a very dynamic position. It is difficult to predict, particularly with the latest lockdown. These figures here were through until the middle of December. That was the latest information that was included. Most of it was just until the end of November. But the projections at the moment are broadly in the same position. Broadly, we're saying at the end of this year, around £2 million adrift, but that's before we do take into account any additional benefit that we'll get from the tax income compensation scheme when we've got the details, and we'll be able to work out what that means. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll actually be square. So if we now turn to the main budget report, So if we go on one more, that's it. So as I said, the revenue budget, we've only got a 1-year settlement from the government, so we are going to have a 1-year set of revenue budget proposals. But if I just give some brief background about the positions to set the context that we're operating within. So as you know, we have faced significant grant cuts from the government. For the 10 years from 2009-10, the grant was cut every consecutive year and very significantly. We did actually get an increase for the current year, so it was £160,000 increase in the revenue support grant for the current year. But at the same time as over that decade we've seen the grant going down, demand for many services has increased significantly, particularly for safeguarding children, or children safeguarding, and adult social care, which are two of our most expensive services. So over that period, what have we done when we've seen our income from the grant going down, but demand and costs for key services going up, and obviously we've seen inflation as well. So we've had to balance the books by making budget savings. So in total, by the end of this year, we will have delivered £126.4 million worth of budget savings. So that's 123.5 and the 2.9 added together. And the medium-term projections, such as we're able to make them, bearing in mind that there aren't any government control totals at the moment beyond next year, would indicate that over the next few years, it's still going to be the same kind of story. So further budget pressures and further savings that we need to make. So what have we done to make that £126 million worth of savings so far? Well, we've obviously shrunk as an organisation. So there are 1,600 posts that have been deleted from our workforce. We've got fewer people, so we need fewer buildings to operate from. So we've got 27 fewer buildings that we now operate from. We've particularly sought to protect frontline services and to focus the cuts on management costs and back office functions. So our senior management team is half the size that it used to be. Our back office services such as finance, legal, HR, ICT, those have faced reductions of 50% over that period. But we've tried to work in new ways in order to protect the services, the frontline services that people actually see and obviously value. So if we just move on again. So a little bit more context, the budget, the size of the council's net revenue budget for the current year is around £129 million. And most of that, the biggest part, is funded by council tax now. So 54% of our net revenue budget comes from council tax. That is a significantly higher proportion than if you go back 10 years ago. And the reason for that is that as the government have reduced the amount of grant that they give to councils, up and down the country, the proportion of council services that are funded by council taxpayers as opposed to the government has switched around. So now council tax, both here and across the country as an average, has increased as a proportion of total council funding. And that's inevitable as the grant has been reduced. So we just move on to the next slide. This one shows what we spend the £129 million on in the current year. So as you can see, by far and away, the biggest proportion, 73%, goes on services for children and adults. Everything else that the council does, because a lot of people, if they haven't got children and they're not old, or they haven't got older relatives, a lot of people don't really think of those as council services. So the things that most people receive, like waste collection, waste disposal, the maintenance of the roads, and cutting the grass and keeping the borough clean, the planning service, environmental health, leisure services, housing, homelessness, business and employment support services, they all add up to just 27% of the council's net budget. So by far and away, our biggest sort of pressures are in those children's safeguarding and particularly adult social care. And that obviously increases as the population ages and we have more older people in the borough. So as a final bit of background, if we just move on to the next slide, which shows, I know it's a bit small, but I'll just explain. This one shows council tax for Band D, which is the national sort of comparator for council tax levels, for all the authorities in the Midlands. So both the East Midlands and the West Midlands. Telford and Wrekin is the red column at the left-hand side. So our Band D council tax is £1,353 for the current year. That is, the average is £1,549.92. That's very helpful. So the average in the Midlands is more than 14% higher than our council tax. If you lived in Nottingham, which is the most expensive area, you'd be paying £454 a year more for your council tax than if you lived in Telford and Wrekin. So that's actually more than a third higher than council tax here. So council, I know when people get the council tax bill, it's a big bill, and you know it's a lot of money for people to find, but it is actually cheaper here than it is anywhere else in the Midlands currently. So we just move on now to the next slide. So the council, when we've done all of our detailed budget work and we've worked out our sort of base budget position, we face a funding shortfall next year of £9.925 million. And I'll now talk about the proposals for the put forward by the administration for how we're going to deal with that significant pressure. So firstly, council tax. Council tax, as you've seen, is a very important funding stream for the council, and the proposal is to increase general council tax by 1.99%, but in addition to that, to apply the government's additional 3% adult social care precept. So that would mean a total increase in the bill for the Telford and Wrekin part of the council tax bill of 4.99%. And if we did that, that would increase our income by £3.639 million towards that £9.9 million shortfall that I mentioned. Now, that's obviously a big increase, but the other sort of wider context to that is that next year the settlement gives us £862,000 less grant than we're receiving in the current year. And although the government have said that they're putting additional funding into councils, what they actually mean is they're allowing councils, and they actually expect that in their figures, they assume that councils like Telford and Wrekin will put their council tax up by the full 4.99% that we're allowed to do so before we hold a referendum. Now, of that, the adult social care precept, the 3% element, that has to be ring-fenced and invested into adult social care. So that would raise 2.19 million, as you can see, and that would fund most of the additional investment that we need to put into adult social care next year and bring the budget for adult social care up to a total of just over £47 million next year. The increase, although it is a big percentage, our average property is in Band B rather than Band D. And the increase for a Band B property works out at £1.01 per week. So that's the increase for the average property in the borough. But clearly, £1.01 a week may not be too much of a burden for some people, but for others, it is a significant increase. So the council does offer the council tax reduction scheme, which is an income-based scheme to reduce the council tax bills for people on low incomes. And in addition to that, we also have a hardship fund for those facing the greatest difficulty in paying the council tax bill. And the proposals put forward by the administration include a doubling of that hardship funding for next year. Even if no other council increases their council tax at all next year, and that really is very, very unlikely, I think most councils are going to go for that kind of 4.99% increase. But even if no council put any increase on their bill for next year, we would still have one of the lowest council tax levels in the whole of the Midlands region for the services that this council is responsible for. If we just move on, that's it. So other proposals in the budget report include putting £500,000 more into the budget for both next year and the following year to support crime and antisocial behaviour initiatives. We're also putting forward a package of budget savings because obviously the council tax increase raises £3.6 million, but I said the budget gap was 9.9 million. So we also need to make some additional budget savings. So that will be a further restructuring activity, looking for additional income from the property investment portfolio and other commercial type initiatives. So in total, around 5.9 million coming from further budget savings next year, and that increases to an ongoing 7.1 million from the following year. And then just to create a balanced budget for next year, we'd also need to use just under £400,000 of one-off resources, which obviously isn't a sustainable option, but it is prudent to use just under £400,000 to balance the position for next year. So in summary then, the revenue budget gap of £9.9 million would be covered by the council tax increase, the further savings, which cover 60% of the shortfall that we're facing, and then a limited use of one-off resources. If we just move on to the capital programme then. As I said, the capital programme needs to be looked at over a number of years because capital projects take time to gain planning permission, to go out to tender, and then to actually deliver on the ground. So in total, the capital programme, which is detailed in the report, totals just over £200 million. Well, it's 228 million, I think, in total over the medium term period. And that includes investment in New Place, which has previously been approved by Cabinet. So another £65 million for New Place investment over and above what we've already spent on New Place. Over £40 million for transport and highway schemes. So that includes further improvements to the A442, repair of potholes, repairs to footways, drainage schemes, road marking schemes, and road safety and other initiatives. Then in addition, we've got money in the capital programme for education schemes. There's £9.6 million for additional investment in the property investment portfolio, and that's important because that not only generates a return for the council that can be used to support frontline services like adult social care, it also maintains existing companies if they're looking to expand and they can't find a suitable set of premises in the borough, then that investment can be used to help retain companies and employment in the borough, and of course to attract new jobs into the borough. And then there's £4 million, which was announced last year in the budget proposals for climate change initiatives. What we did say last year, though, was that £4 million was both a contingency and also available for climate change initiatives. What we're saying now is that is just going to be used for climate change initiatives over the medium term. Now, the council does face significant uncertainties going forward, and there's obviously the immediate issues from the pandemic, but there's also what is that going to do to the economy and demand for council services over the next few years once life's gone back to normal. So that's one kind of area that we're facing uncertainty over. Another is as I mentioned, the government haven't issued any public spending totals beyond next year. And that's the third year in a row that we haven't been able to do any medium-term financial planning. What they have said, though, is that there will be a medium-term comprehensive spending review at some point during the next 12 months. And that's obviously going to be very important in terms of enabling us to then see what the future holds for us. But as you'll know from previous years' discussions, the government have been saying for a number of years that they're going to make major changes to the local government finance system. And those were going to come in originally in April 2020, then April 2021, and now the date has slipped again for understandable reasons. Obviously, civil servants and everybody else have been very, very busy with work on the pandemic. But now we've got this period of uncertainty extended again because these changes have slipped again to April next year. So what are they? Well, they're wide-ranging and they are going to potentially have very significant impacts on the funding position for the council going forward. So they will reset the business rates system. So that means that all of the growth that we've been benefiting from since April 2013, so we've managed to retain or been able to retain 49% of the value of the growth in business rates income since 2013. But all of that will get redistributed, put into a pot nationally. Everybody will put their growth into the pot and will be redistributed across the country. So if you've grown higher than the national average, you'll lose out. The government have been saying for some time that they will increase the proportion of business rates income that's retained locally from the 49% that we currently receive, the Fire Authority get 1% of it, to 75%. And of that, we'd get 73.5%, the Fire Authority would get the other 1.5%. Now, on the face of it, that seems like good news, but in order to make sure that the government is no worse off overall, they would terminate other funding streams to make sure it was revenue neutral at a national level for the government. And obviously it does increase risk because in recessions and in times of difficulty, if business rates income goes down, we'd obviously be bearing a higher proportion of that risk than we do at the moment. Other parts of the proposed reform are that they will introduce a new formula to assess the relative spending needs of different council areas. So at the moment, we still do retain some grant from the government, some revenue support grant. Other councils don't get any of that now. Some obviously get a lot more than us, but one of the reasons we still retain it when others have lost it is that there is a recognition of deprivation within the current formula. The proposals that have been talked about reducing the emphasis that's put on deprivation. So potentially that could see a switch of resources away from councils like Telford and Wrekin. The New Homes Bonus system is a significant funding stream for us. Even though we've seen a reduction for next year, it's still a very significant funding stream. And they are talking about making changes to that system. Again, they have been talking about that for some time. But there will be a consultation during the next 12 months about it, and the new system is going to be in place from 22-23, so the year after next. In order to manage the impact of all of these changes, the cumulative impact of them on individual councils, there'll be some kind of transitional system that will be worked up, but at the moment, obviously, we don't know what that would look like. And clearly, they need to set public spending priorities and totals over the medium term. Now, it is likely that they'll continue to protect and prioritise the NHS and education, defence, law and order services. So councils may not be that high at, on the list of priorities like they haven't been for many years. So it is possible that with the pressure, obviously the national debt has reached record levels. So it is possible that councils will face several more years of considerable financial constraint. But we need the comprehensive spending review in order to see what the total cake is for local government. Then we need these other sort of technical changes to the system, the local government finance system, to be put in place so that we can see how much of that cake actually comes to Telford and Wrekin. One of the big things that they still need to set out a long-term approach to is how will adult social care costs be funded in the future, because they are increasing rapidly. They are an increasingly significant proportion of our budget. So we just move on to the timetable that we're working to. Last Thursday, Cabinet agreed the draft set of papers for consultation. So they are just proposals at the moment, which are out for consultation period, which runs through until the 7th of February. The final set of recommendations from Cabinet to full council will be agreed on the 18th of February. And in the report that goes to Cabinet on the 18th, there'll be a section that summarises the views of this committee. And then the budget strategy will actually be finally agreed at full council. So all members of the council get the opportunity to comment on it and vote on the final set of proposals, including, and that will include an additional report that sets the actual council tax levels for each parish in the borough. So I think that's everything that I wanted to say. Before I sort of open it up for questions, or before Stephen does, Ray, is there anything that you'd like to add at this point?
No, I think you've done an excellent job. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for a very good presentation. I'll open it up for questions now. So top of my list is Coldip. So if Coldip can open the batting, that'd be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ken, on your medium-term capital program key proposal, you talk about attracting new jobs and retaining the companies that may otherwise leave the borough if suitable premises are not available. Are we thinking about giving a free rent, or what kind of a help is that to keep the companies in?
Well, that's capital money, Coldip, that we use in order to build new premises. And it's the fact a lot of companies who want to expand, they may not be able to stay in the borough if there aren't suitable premises available. So that funding there is to construct new premises that would then rent out to companies. And it's the fact that they've got those, you know, a suitable set of premises that will keep them in the borough.
Yeah. Okay. Just one more. At the start, you said our business rate and the council tax rate is down by 5.10. You said the business is going sort of bust or something. That's why the business rate is down. But the council, I missed what was the reason for the council tax being down this year or last year?
I think it's the challenges people have faced probably over the period of the pandemic. So some people have lost their jobs, some people have been furloughed. Where people are facing difficulty, we're obviously putting them in touch with the council tax reduction scheme. We're using the hardship scheme. We're agreeing payment arrangements with people to spread the cost over a longer period. So we're working with people as much as we can, but there is undoubtedly, there's going to be a cash flow problem this year in terms of the income that we collect. By the end of the year, we won't have collected as much as we would normally have collected. And that's really down to the impact of the pandemic, I think.
Oh, that's all right. Thanks very much, Chair. Chair, I got to leave now for another
Okay.
meeting, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Culdip. Thanks for attending. Adrian, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Ken, just a couple of questions for you. In your earlier slide, you had the 5.1 million figure, which was, possible non-collection of rates, business and domestic. What's your feeling for what's the sort of realistic proportion? I know you said the phasing of it meant that would be collectible in future periods. So obviously, the element that's going to be bad debt is going to be a lot higher, but presumably the whole of that 5.1 million is not going to just disappear. Any thought what's realistic?
We're currently working on that, Adrian. So at the moment, I wouldn't like to say. I don't think it's going to be as bad as we originally thought. So I think it's. I wouldn't like to put a figure on it at the moment, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as we initially thought.
Yeah. I guess things might get worse. I mean, there's some other lockdown. It could change, couldn't it, as well?
It could, yeah.
Yeah. So the other question is, Culdip just touched on it there. Obviously, a lot of people in the borough are on furlough, and a lot of people have lost their jobs. Have we got any ability from HMRC to work out how many people are on furlough currently in the borough, or is that? Do we have that information in? And can
we do have that information. If I had a better memory, I'd be able to tell you about it. We could send you some information about the numbers on furlough and how we compare to other council areas.
Yeah, if you can ahead of next week, because obviously my thought is that, it's exactly as you've intimated there, that the 5% is understandable in our financial situation, but if a lot of our residents have lost jobs and have lost 20% of their income, that's a rock and a hard place, isn't it? So, and the other question is what's happened with unemployment, in the last sort of year as well. So if you could share that at the same time as the furlough bit, I think that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Cheers.
Thank you, Adrian. Right, Eric.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, if I may, Ken. One, early on in your report, you talked about, obviously, the staff working from home. This is something that's happening across the country, and offices basically empty. We've got currently the third lockdown scheme. There's no sure date at the moment when that's going to change. But also across the country, and I've got this from the LGA, which I used to visit frequently but now can't, that things are going to drastically change even when we go back to normal, hopefully before too much longer, about people attending offices anyway. Are there thoughts about how the council might deal with this, in the fact that we've got Derby House, we've got Addenbrooke, and we've got Granville, we've got places that we've had? Is there going to be the same necessity or need for those people to be all coming back to the office, or will they still be working from home? That's one question. Mm-hmm. The second one basically is, it's something for the future. You've seen obviously that I think it's Croydon Council are almost bankrupt, and a lot of that is down to the money that they've invested on companies like New Place, not New Place itself, but similar types of operation where they've borrowed hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds and they're not getting the income, which has given them a real serious problem. Hopefully this is something that the council will take into account with the large borrowing, an additional borrowing of 65 million odd plus 40 that they're going to be doing, to make sure we keep a firm eye on that to ensure our profitability going forward. And then there's one final point, if I may. This is more of a point I read in the newspaper, I think yesterday, where JCB have now just brought out this new model for doing potholes. I don't know whether you've seen this, which reduces the time to do a pothole by 50% and cuts the cost by over 50%. This is something I was going to raise with highways, because we do have a considerable amount of work with our highways do in terms of pothole repairs, and this could give a significant saving, as well as doing the job a lot more efficiently than the current system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of working from home and whether that's going to continue, I think it's what we're doing at the moment, Eric, is looking through every job that is office based and we're looking at, in the future, what do we think is appropriate for those jobs? So some people will be 100% based at home. For example, I already have people in the revenues team that are 100% based at home even before the pandemic, and it might be that a lot more of that team are based 100% from home in the future. Because they're well able to do their jobs from home, and if they've got a suitable setup at home, that's absolutely fine, and it's, you know, they're happy to do that. That's fine. Other jobs, if you're a receptionist, for example, it's difficult to do that from home, so we're saying that those people will have to be office based. So we're looking at every job on an individual basis, but it's likely, I would say, that most people will have a mix of working in the office and also working at home going forward. So we won't be going back to having the same kind of arrangements that we had before the pandemic. It is an opportunity. It's actually worked really well for people, both from a personal perspective, but also in terms of getting the work done. So we will retain working from home for a lot of people going forward. The savings proposals I mentioned do include some assumptions around that as well, and reducing our need for accommodation. In terms of your point about Croydon are one of a couple of councils that have issued Section 114 notices. I think there are a range of reasons for why they've done that. In respect of New Place, New Place is a really successful venture for the council. It's providing, as it was intended to, high quality homes for people in the private rented sector, and secure long-term tenancies, because like a private landlord, the council isn't going to suddenly decide it wants to sell up and evict the tenants and go on a cruise or whatever. So secure, good quality, well managed homes in the private sector. But from a financial point of view, it's strengthening our balance sheet, because the value of those properties, we build them. If you build your own house, you get a self-build premium, don't you? If you built your own house, you'd expect it to be worth more than it costs to build. You get the developer's profit. So the council has built in quite a lot of value in terms of developing those properties itself. And in terms of the total revenue benefit to the council, it is around £1.5 million a year now, each year, and that's likely to grow with that additional investment. The demand for New Place homes is really high. So we have a very low void rate. The rents are being paid, even in the current circumstances. The kind of issues with bad debts really haven't come to the fore yet. Hopefully they won't. So for the time being, I think New Place is actually doing a really good job, both for the residents but also for the council, because that £1.5 million surplus we're getting is being used to help support the frontline services that the council delivers. And yeah, your point about the pothole repairs, we're open to any new ideas, and I'm sure that Dean, our director for that area, will look at that. I don't know if David Sidaway's on the call. I don't know whether David wanted to add any points to what I've just said or not.
The only thing I'll just comment on was the earlier question from Councillor Lawrence in relation to furlough. As Ken said, we can provide the details and the comparators across the West Midlands, but from having a quick look at the numbers that I'm aware of, we're just over 9,500 that have been furloughed in the borough, and that's recent data, if that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, David. You okay with that, Eric? Have we answered everything? That's
yes,
fine.
Thank you very much. There are other things, but I'll leave them for now. There are one or two things I'll talk about later, but thank you.
Well, you can always submit them after, yeah,
we've got a further report coming up, later, and there's one thing I want to say on that.
Okay, Eric. Cindy, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Ken, can I just return very briefly to the hardship fund? Can I ask, is the criteria for the council tax hardship fund assistance based on criteria which is set by the government, or is the criteria set by Telford and Wrekin Council? Are you forecasting an increase in the assistance that might be offered over the next 12 months, primarily due to the pandemic and also Brexit? And then I just wanted to ask a quick question about the council tax as well, the percentage of the net revenue budget.
Okay. So if I deal with those two first, then we come back to council tax. So the hardship criteria, the hardship fund is something that is fully funded by the council. So it's not a national scheme. It's something that the council has put in place and fully funds. So the criteria are set by the council on that one.
When was it set and when was it last reviewed?
It was last reviewed 12 months ago because we made some changes to the council tax reduction scheme. And at that point, we actually increased the funding significantly at that point. So Ray was involved in the kind of redesign of the scheme, but we increased the funding. At least doubled it for the current year. But what the administration are proposing is that is doubled again for next year. But in a way, it works in a way that if we had significant need to, people met the criteria, then we would allocate, even if it went over the increased provision. We wouldn't limit the provision just because we'd gone over the amount that was set. We'd keep providing support, provided people meet the criteria for the scheme. Are we projecting a need for increased assistance? Well, yeah, we're looking at the potential costs because most people get the assistance that they need from the main council tax reduction scheme, which costs us around, I can't remember, 12.5 to 13 million pounds a year, and that we have done some projections which are built into the report that sets the council tax base. Because of the way it works, it's a discount off the bill. So when we set the council tax base tomorrow at full council, there are some assumptions about the scheme in there. So yes, there has been a bit of an assumption in terms of increased caseload. The point about Brexit, we can't really pull out Brexit. It's just one of many issues that will affect the population and the council, but on its own, I can't kind of give you a figure for that one, I'm afraid.
Thank you. I grouped the pandemic and Brexit together as one because I thought it's difficult to forecast. Can I just do a very quick question about the net revenue budget as well? Your slide showed that council tax revenue is 54% of the net revenue budget. I'm assuming that will increase with the increase to the council tax. How does that 54% compare to the rest of the West Midlands? And I know that we do like to compare a lot to the rest of the West Midlands. Is that comparable to other local authorities?
I don't have that information, I'm afraid. What I do know is the Local Government Association have produced in some of their information. They've said that the proportion of council services funded from council tax nationally has increased from 45% in 2010 to 60% in the current year. So that's like from 45% of the total to 60% of the total nationally. So I suppose rather than the West Midlands, I can say that based on the LGA's figures, 60% of the net budget of most councils is funded from council tax at the moment, whereas we're at 54%, so below the average. But then we have a relatively low level of council tax.
You use the term council services as part of that LGA quote. Would you say that our net revenue budget is 100% council services? Are we comparing like we like?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not trying to play with words.
No, I didn't think you were. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Cindy. Is there any other questions to be put forward to Ken and Ray? If I can't see any other hands up. does Ray want to add anything, or no? You're quite happy. Okay. All I can say then is thank you, Ken, and thank you, Ray, for a very interesting presentation. What we'll be doing now is going asking you to sort of leave the meeting, but thanks for your attendance tonight. I'm going to open it up to all the members after you've gone. So if there are any other questions that are relating to this, I will get them submitted to you so that we can get answers to those questions for Monday's meeting. So if you're happy with that, Ray, you're coming back in.
Yes, Chair. As it's a public meeting, is it all right if I remain?
Yeah, of course you can.
I just won't speak. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ray. All right. So thank you, Ken. Thanks for attending. And
Okay.
as I say, we'll be in touch shortly on any other questions.
Okay, thank you very much then.
Okay, thank you, Ken.
Bye.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Right. What we'll do now then is if we open it up for any other further questions or any ideas that come to light, I can ask Kieran to note those, and as I say, we'll submit those straight away to Ken for answers for next week's meeting. So is there any other comments at all or questions? Cindy?
She's on mute.
So, you're muted, Cindy.
Sorry, I was trying to be really good and mute myself. The 2021 budget includes a general contingency of 3.2 million, which has been set aside to meet any unforeseen expenditure. Can I just ask if we can find out how that figure has come about? Why 3.2 million? What's the reasoning behind it? And also with the hardship funding, is it possible to have figures, say, over the last 2 to 3 years of the amount of hardship funding that's been given?
Okay.
Thank you.
Ray, if you're still there, can you answer any of those?
Sort of, but it won't be as good as Ken answering. The contingency funding is based around, some of it is COVID, against COVID demands. That was part, why that exact figure, Cindy, I couldn't tell you. In terms of hardship fund, yeah, I think we will be able to provide that information, probably as a graph for you, but yeah, I'm sure we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just to say that at the moment, my recollection is that the claim on the hardship fund is actually slightly down on last year.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. So we'll submit those points straight away, and we'll get an answer for Monday on those. Right, Eric, welcome again.
Yes, thanks. There was one thing I was going to ask Ken, but I was looking at the report, which is item 5, which was following, because it's within that. But I can ask him when we come to the meeting next week if he's present. Yes. And that was to do with one of the things I keep commenting on over the last few years, which is single status, because it seems to be a never-ending scheme. Are we ever going to pay this money out? Because I noticed in the page 107. We're talking about it in 2024, still having provision for settlement of 8.92 million. That's going back another 3 years forward. So I just wanted to ask that, but I thought I'd get the opportunity, but now he's gone. I'll leave it, but I'll mention it now, but I will be raising it again at the next meeting.
I'm sure Eric will note that, and we should get an answer on that on Monday.
Thank you.
Jim Lavery.
Just going back a while, Eric mentioned the potholing machine. Would it be sensible to talk to the contractors to see what their portfolio of machinery is and whether they have any intention of acquiring it and whether that would bring us any reductions?
I will be raising it to James with highways myself.
No, I meant not the actual highways department, the actual contractors that do the work for the highways department.
Yeah, Ada Verdi and so on. Yeah.
Have they got the machine?
I don't think they have.
Have they got any intention of getting the machine?
Well,
and yeah. That really is more the question, because there's no point us buying it and giving it to Ivor Verdi, is there?
No. No, well, I'll ask the question.
Okay. I would imagine also that would be probably part of the procurement process regarding those companies. So if there is something that's going to improve potholes and other highway work, I'm sure that they're fully aware of this particular machinery. So it would be part of their procurement for the future.
Would hope so then, Chair, yeah.
Okay. Adrian.
Yeah, I was just a little bit of an extra question if we could pass along to Ken.
Yeah.
It was coming back from the Chief Exec's answer of 9,500 people on furlough. I wonder if we could find out, what impact that is having on their take-home pay. Because, and my point is that the increase in council tax is going to squeeze people quite a lot. So I'm interested to know what impact the furlough has on average on the 9,500 people's disposable income, and compare that to the increase in council tax. And if there's any feeling for what proportion of those may be eligible for the hardship scheme.
Yeah.
I don't just need to be a massive exercise, but just to give us an idea of what the sort of income of those people are likely to be, and what impact it's having, the reduction of furlough and the impact of the increase.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. Yeah, we'll add that to the list of questions. I think, as I will be in addition to what you've already asked about furlough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It sounds like we got an answer for that already, didn't we? But we need to confirm it, obviously. Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers.
Right. Eric, you're back in again.
No, it wasn't me. I took my hand. I saw David had his hand in the air. David Sidaway.
Oh, hello, David.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, Chair. I was just going to respond briefly to Councillor Lawrence's question. What we won't have, we'll have the total number that are on furlough. What we won't have is the individual circumstances for each person in terms of how much they're receiving on the back of that furlough payment. I guess we can absolutely, in line with what Councillor Evans referred to around hardship, we can provide that data, but we will not know the individual details of everybody on furlough, I'm afraid. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, David. I can't. Is there any other questions? Oh, Charles.
You're muted, Charles.
Yeah, Charles, you're on mute.
Sorry about that, Chair. I thought I was unmuted.
That's all right.
It's about the potholes. I saw the report on potholes. It said the average time of repairing was 8 minutes.
Yeah.
What I forgot to say is that the travelling time to mend the potholes adds a lot of time. The roadworks guarding also takes time, and also that's the small potholes. You get the larger ones, they take a bit longer and need a bit more repair. Over the years, we've tried to repair these differently, including melting the tarmac around them and digging them out. But it's an expensive process, and this machine itself is very expensive. So don't expect any big reduction in the amount of money you have to spend on doing the potholes. That's the problem we got, and we haven't got the money to do. We have to look at whether we need to spend the money on proper services, other services which people expect, and also the children and more elderly people, or whether in fact we should be spending money on expensive machinery to do what is an 8-minute repair, which actually takes a lot longer than that for travelling to the time. And also, don't forget, it needs 2 or 3 operatives to do it. So I just urge a note of caution on that with potholes. Also, I think we've got no option but to put up the council tax by 4.99. The government are decreeing that we put it up by 4.99, 3% ring fenced and 1.99 to do general services. We've got no option.
Okay, thanks, Charles. Eric, you want to come in there?
Yeah, just come back to Charles, because I do take his point, but when you read that report that was in the newspaper, if you read it properly, it isn't just about the cost saving, it's about the quality of the repair. And there are councils and in Nottinghamshire that are already taking this up, and the quality of the finish and the repair is of a higher quality and higher standard than is currently done. Plus, I would suggest that the financial cost of this would go down to the contractors rather than the council. So it's up for them to make the decision. And I think it would, in the long term, save them money, because they wouldn't have to keep coming back every 5 minutes to repair the potholes they've already repaired, because they're not doing the job properly. I'll say no more than that. Thank you.
No, fair enough, Eric. Adrian, again. Adrian, you coming in?
Oh, sorry, I hadn't unmuted myself. It was just coming back to Charles' point about government decreeing it. I think what it is it's assumed that councils will go for 5%. I don't think it's compelled that we are. I mean, I don't know whether there's anything clarification that Ken can give us on that point, because I understood that their expectation is, but it's not a requirement. And there's actually a scheme in place where you can spread the 3% over 2 years, as well as I understand it. But I mean, if you can get Ken to confirm that, because I think it's unfair to say it's an insistence from government.
Chair, as it's a matter of fact, then I can clarify that if it helps.
Yes, right.
Adrian is correct. It isn't compulsory. However, all of the government calculations are based on the expectation that we will levy the full amount.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. Yeah, I mean, I understand that. It just, I didn't want it to be positioned as that we're just required to, because I think that's not correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But we won't have a leg to stand on if we then go back and try and ask for more money later if we don't. The other thing you raised was about spreading the council tax over 3 years. In fact, what you're referring to is the fact that the government has said that the shortfall in the collection fund could be collected over the next 3 years. So the shortfall this year that we have in our council tax collection impacts next year technically. Now, if you look at the report, we've decided that we would rather clear that and not carry over a legacy problem. But we do have the potential to carry that shortfall across 3 years, you're right.
Councillor Evans, it was the 3% adult social care precept.
Oh, yes.
Carry that over 2 years. I think it's a different option that I was talking about.
Yes, I think you're right. But who knows what will happen next year? I won't say any more because I don't want to over-influence anybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Thank you, Adrian. Any other questions or comments?
Okay, if I leave now, Chair, I've got something else to go to.
Yeah, of course. So. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Cheers. Take care. Right. There doesn't seem to be any other questions. If everyone's happy, we'll go on to the chair's briefing. Just a couple of things I just want to raise. One of them was at the last meeting of in December, we had a presentation done by LEP, and a few comments and questions came out about the actual finance of the LEP in respect of them using their reserves, running costs and for running costs and things like that. And there's a lot of questions around corporation tax and VAT. Now, on your behalf, what I have done is arranged for a letter to be sent to the leader of Telford and Wrekin, Sean Davis, who will then hopefully will submit it then to the cabinet for discussion. Anthea, I see you got your hand up.
Yes, Chair, I didn't want to interrupt your update, but it was just before we end the meeting, could we just have some clarity as to whether you want any officers other than the finance-related officers at the next meeting?
Okay. Did you get that? I would imagine that it would be, yeah, we would like to invite Ray and Ken to the meeting on Monday, so that he can answer some of the questions that have arisen after his presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
If everyone's in agreement to that, of course. Yeah, looks like it.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not getting the...
Nobody's against that. So yes, if we can cordially invite Ken and Ray, that would be great.
Just for clarity then, Chair, I'm not getting the sense that members have a desire to hear from any other officers within SMT. You're quite happy to receive the answers to the questions from the finance team, which is Ken, and obviously Councillor Evans to attend in her role as cabinet member for finance.
Yeah. David, do you want to come in there?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Anthea. I'll also attend if that's okay, Chair and members.
Yeah,
and I'll look at the detail of the questions, although I've already made notes, and want to see the clarity from Kieran. If it's okay, Chair, delegate that to me in terms of which officers need to attend. But I think in summary, it's probably Ken and myself and maybe one other from what I've heard so far, if that's okay, Chair.
Okay, that's fine, David. I'll leave that down to you to decide who's appropriate or not. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Everyone seems to be in agreement to that. Nathan.
Hi, Chair. It was just a comment, really. I was just checking with the questions that we've had. Is there a need for another meeting, or could the questions be answered by email and we vote forward on the budget proposals tonight?
Would that be in agreement to everybody here? I think it would. To give some time. Presumably this will give us an opportunity to have a look at the papers and probably a little bit deeper, so that if there are any other questions that do appear, we can submit them to Kieran tomorrow and over the weekend, and then hopefully that the cabinet and the cabinet member and Ken and David will be able to answer all our questions for Monday, and then if there is a need, then we can then agree on the budget proposals on Monday.
Okay, Chair. It was just an idea because everyone seems to be broadly in agreement with the proposals that we've had. That was all. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. No, I say just have Charles.
Just to say, Chair, you can't take the budget meeting vote tonight because all the members already left, and we do require them to be able to attend. I think Monday's meeting should go ahead, but it should be a very short meeting, really.
Yeah, well,
questions.
That's fine. Yeah, I think I agree with you there, Charles. Cindy.
Yeah, Chair, just going to clarify. Is it okay if we then receive the additional information that we've requested prior to the next meeting, if we submit questions or seek further clarification prior to the next meeting? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so all questions to Kieran, is that correct?
Yes, send them to either to Kieran or Anthea, but Kieran generally is collating all the questions, so he'll submit them to Ken accordingly, and we should get a response all being well on Monday evening.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So any other? No. Everyone happy with that? Good. Okay. So as I was saying, I've just to let you know that I have submitted a letter to Sean as the leader of Telford and Wrekin regarding the LEP and their financial position regarding the use of their reserves for running costs and all sorts of other things, and what we're then looking for is a response from the cabinet in due course regarding our suggestions all around that. So that is going to Sean either tonight or tomorrow. So hopefully we'll have a response from that fairly shortly. The other thing is that Kieran wants to thank you for the response regarding the school street motion, which a lot of you have responded accordingly. If there's anybody else that is interested in going on this working group along with the CYP Scrutiny Committee, please submit your names to Kieran. I believe that it is a little bit oversubscribed at the moment, but what we want to do is make sure that we've got representation from all the scrutiny committees right across Telford and Wrekin. And as I say, Kieran and Anthea will be looking at that to make sure that we've got representation, not just for the finance and business scrutiny, but also all the other scrutiny committees right across the board. So if anybody is further interested, please submit your names to Kieran. Other than that, I think I look forward to Monday's meeting. And I say, if you think of any other questions, please submit them for tomorrow or Friday at the latest. And then I say I look forward to seeing you all on Monday night, and hopefully we can go through all the answers and come to some agreement on the proposed budget for Telford and Wrekin for next year. Okay, so thank you everybody for attending. Is there any other? It looks fairly quiet, so I'm quite happy. So thank you very much for attending tonight, and thank you listening, all the public out there and the press, and thanks for attending tonight, and I'll look forward to seeing you Monday. Okay, cheers everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.